Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the International Affairs Forum at Northwestern Michigan College. My name is Alex Tank. I'm the director of the International Affairs Forum. It's quite a year so far, eh? Yeah. Well, I was just talking about the snow, that's all. Well, we're so glad to see all of you here in person and happy to welcome our online audience connecting from around the region to our east in Rogers City tonight, as well as folks in New York, South Carolina, certainly out in Arizona, down in Florida this time of year. We've had some folks sign up from Ontario as well, so it's great to see. Special greeting to our satellite partners at the Old Art Building who are gathered there in Leland tonight and for every IAF hybrid event. Let's do our thing and give them a little wave. This is the camera right here. There they are. Well, we appreciate them being there and convening and helping to expand our International Affairs Forum community. I'd like to thank our advisory board, IAF advisory board. They're all dedicated volunteers, many of whom are here tonight. The members of our International Affairs Forum student leadership team, you see them around. They're doing some great work on a project here for our April 17th event. So make sure that you mark that date and join us for that. And then other folks from our teams at the Denos Museum Center and the NMC Foundation, all putting a hand in to make these successful events. I'd also like to thank a few groups who have helped.
Okay, that's our cue to get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for braving the first day of spring in northern Michigan. I'm Nick Nisley, and I have the great privilege of serving as the president of Northwestern Michigan College. And on behalf of the college, I'd like to extend a really warm Traverse City welcome to all of tonight's attendees, whether you're here in person or attending online. I'm especially excited about tonight's program on the blue economy. It's an intersectional space. It's a space that brings together our International Affairs Forum along with our NMC Great Lakes Water Studies Institute. And if you were able to attend earlier tonight, I hope you enjoyed the IAF-hosted Blue Tech Business Community Conversation, which was designed to explore the importance of blue tech economic innovation as related to our region's water resources. On a personal note, you may have heard me say this before, I'm not just a college president, I'm also trained as an environmental geologist who started my early career in the mining industry, specifically working on water resources challenges. So this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I've also made a conscious decision, like most of you, to call northern Michigan home. And every weekend I seek out the restorative powers of the Great Lake that's in our backyard. Simply, like you, I care deeply about our region's water resources. Let me also say I'm thankful for our speakers this evening and the opportunity for us to hear about Northwestern Michigan College's unique role as a driver in the workforce training in the water resources sector through our Great Lakes Water Studies Institute and our Marine Technology Program, as well as our role as a co-founder of the Freshwater Research and Innovation Center. Lastly, I need to put this pitch into you. It's IAF's membership appeal time, and that's going to be occurring later next month and into June. So please be watching your inbox. You obviously believe in the power of IAF. That's why you're here tonight. And you believe in the power of IAF as a platform for convening around important topics like water resources here in northern Michigan. So if you're not already, I hope you'll show your support with membership and maybe annual giving. But with that, I'll say again, welcome everyone, and I'm going to invite Alex Tank up to the podium. If you're not familiar, Alex serves as our director of the International Affairs Forum, and he will be introducing tonight's guests. Alex?
Okay, thank you, President Nisley. Before I introduce our guests this evening, I'd like to welcome our online audience. We've been doing this every time. We have satellite partners around the region, and the very first one is in Leland at the Old Art Building, and I got a report here via text that there are 30 people there at the Old Art Building, so give them a wave there. There's the camera over there. Okay, you get to cheer one more time because I'm very, very excited to announce that we have a new satellite partnership, and that is on the other side of the state in Rogers City. It's the Zonta Club of Rogers City, and they're gathered tonight at the Presque Isle District Library. This is the first time they're joining us officially, so give them a resounding Traverse City welcome. So I'm also thrilled to share that we held our 12th annual Academic World Quest competition last month at the Haggerty Center on our Great Lakes campus. And that's our Quiz Bowl style competition, which serves as a deep dive into global affairs for our region's high school students. This year was our biggest competition ever with 120 students, 26 teams, representing 8 area high schools. So that's a program we're very excited about. There's the group there, and very creative winners there from Traverse City West Senior High. They decided to sort of change up the perspective on us. And we're proud of all those students. They did a great job. The questions are well beyond any of our intelligence in this room. And the winning team got, I think it was 79 out of 100 questions correct, which is really remarkable. It's a high caliber. So Academic World Quest was made possible by IAF's supporting members, all the familiar faces I see here, and donors, a team of gracious volunteers, our lunch sponsor, Jimmy John's, media sponsor, Traverse City Record Eagle, and a bounty of door prize donors that you see there. And big thanks to our Academic World Quest coordinator, David Peck, for his consistent work to bring that competition to our students again this year. So, a lot of people to thank on that list. And you can thank them by going and visiting them and seeing what you can find. Other people to thank today are all volunteer IAF Advisory Board, our IAF student leadership team, the volunteers that were out at the front, and they're going to be helping with questions later, our team at the Dennis Museum Center and the NMC Foundation, our tech team in the booth led by Maria Ulrich and Jeff Norman, our Music Hub live stream team, that's led by Ruby Bardenhagen. Ruby Bardenhagen. She is a great musician in her own right, if you've never heard of her, but she's also a graduate of the NMC Audio Technology Program. So I want to acknowledge all those people. And biggest thanks to our supporting members. Over 450 of you have made this programming possible for students, educators, and our community bank. And Jeff beat me to the slide because that's another big person to thank, our sponsors for the season, Mercantile Bank. Yeah. All right. Also want to acknowledge business community members, Desmond Liggett Wealth Advisors, Century LLC, and Nicolette Bank. So, how we'll run tonight's program. Now's a good time to silence your mobile devices, or you could set communicators to vibrate, to paraphrase Captain Kirk. So we'll have the Q&A period after our conversation with our speakers. Folks online, you can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A function at any point during the program. And for everyone here in person, there are question cards around. You may have seen them at the front check-in. We'll have our volunteers circulating as well. And we'll begin collecting those cards after the conversation with our panelists and speakers. And another option for everyone is to email questions to iaf@nmc.edu. Okay, on to the introductions of our speakers. John C. Austin leads the Eisenhower Institute's work promoting ideas and network building to spread economic opportunity and strengthen democracies across the globe. He also serves as a non-resident senior fellow with the Brookings Institution, where for 20-plus years he has led efforts to support economic transformation in the American Midwest and in the industrial heartlands of Western democracies. Mr. Austin is also an affiliated faculty with the University of Michigan Marsall School of Education. Previously, he served 16 years as a statewide elected official on the Michigan State Board of Education, including as the board's president for 6 years. Austin received his master's in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and a bachelor's from Swarthmore College in economics and political science with high honors and Phi Beta Kappa. It is an honor to welcome back to the IAF stage Frank Ettawageshik, the executive director of the United Tribes of Michigan. He served 14 years as tribal chairman of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, playing a key role in the 2004 Tribal and First Nations Great Lakes Water Accord. He was a delegate to the UN Climate Conference, that's COP21, in 2015, and is a member of the International Indigenous Peoples Caucus on Climate Change. Amidst decades of impactful work, he helped establish the United League of Indigenous Nations Treaty in 2007 and serves on the Great Lakes Water Quality Board. His work spans indigenous governance, environmental policy, and international advocacy, and he's one of the most thoughtful environmental activists and stewards in our part of the world. So we're honored to have Frank with us. Finally, yeah, feel free, yeah. Yeah, well-earned applause. Finally, John Luchko is the director of the Great Lakes Water Studies Institute here at NMC. He graduated from NMC's Freshwater Studies program in 2013 and has flourished as a leader in marine technology and education. As a GLWSI lab coordinator, he oversaw operations, piloted ROVs, captained the RV Northwestern, I assume that's Research Vessel Northwestern, and presented at national conferences. He played a key role in expanding NMC's marine technology program beyond ROVs to hydrographic surveying, remote sensing, and data analysis, enhancing workforce training and job placement rates. A recognized expert, he has co-taught key courses, led professional training, and contributed to research with NOAA, the National Park Service, and USGS. He's an active member of the Marine Technology Society and other national organizations. So please give a warm International Affairs Forum welcome to first John C. Austin. Back through that way.
Well, thank you, Alex. And I'm going to show you some pictures and tell you a story about how this region and state can lead the global blue economy building. But let me say first what a treat it is to be back here in Traverse City, and I'm really here to both learn and egg you on and applaud your efforts to become one of the centers of innovation, education, and new opportunity development, celebrating and innovating around our great, amazing waters. It was about 15 or 20 years ago when I first had this idea that there was this blue economy to build up and out. As I first began to talk about, yes, we have the opportunity to be the center of innovation and blue economy building. Tim Nelson, your former president here at Northwestern, he was one of the few people that not only understood what I was talking about, because a lot of people thought I was crazy, what are you talking about, blue economy? But he also was already beginning to do it and build out this institution and this region's as a center of water education, research, learning, and he was one of my early partners in the picture and story I'm going to tell you tonight. You know, this Great Lakes region, this industrial heartland of America, we really led in the 20th century in solving problems for the world, in building the economy that powered America and Canada's might during the 20th century. We put the world on wheels with the auto industry. We delivered healthy food for the masses around the world. Folks down the road at Kellogg's and others began to help healthy food be available. We invented the pill in Kalamazoo at the Upjohn Institute, medical innovations that treated lives. We invented the retail sales industry to help farmers out west order something from Sears and Roebuck. We invented the airplane, aviation, the oil industry, all the industries that powered America's might, and solved problems and made lives better for people. You know, down the road in Benton Harbor, the Upton brothers invented the first washing machine and kitchen appliances that were labor-saving devices for people and solved problems and made life better. Well, now today, we do have the opportunity to be the problem solver for the world on the things that the world needs to work on today. These are the problems of sustainability, and as I hope you'll hear from Frank, who I'm always in awe of, the tribes have always understood that we can and must live in balance and harmony with the world and the natural order, that we are one. So today's big global challenges, and actually the global business opportunities and economic opportunities, are in feeding a hungry world, in new modes of mobility that don't wreck the planet, moving people and goods, and solving the problems around clean energy and ameliorating climate change, and delivering water and smart water solutions, and being good stewards and making available this beautiful green-blue planet that we're on. And it certainly means a focus on, in the world, how do we get and how do we use this precious natural resource? And this is at the center, and look at that picture. We are at the center in the Great Lakes of what I call the emerging blue and green economy, solving the world's problems around sustainable living, growing the new jobs, businesses, and solutions, making a robust, rich, nature-enjoying fabric of life for nourishing our spirit and growing new economic opportunity. And I'm going to talk about how that works. And certainly, I mean, this is a unique region with the Great Lakes, and we all know how much of the world's fresh water we have, but we're with the rest of the world racked by climate change, droughts, weather bombs that are even worse than the ones that we get here. We are one of the only, perhaps, and certainly one of the few in the world, sustainable platforms for growth. We can accommodate more people. We can accommodate more business if we smartly use and reuse these precious natural assets. And with climate change, any place that has lots of green, lots of blue, is going to be a choice location for people to live and work. And water is not like oil. You can't use it up. You have to use it smartly, and you can reuse it. So we are one of the few places on Earth that is, in some ways, climate change advantaged, though we can also show the world how to ameliorate climate change, which is one of our big economic opportunities. So, but all that sounds, very big picture, solve the world's problems. What does this blue economy piece look like? How does water matter to jobs, businesses, the economy? Well, we know that people like to be on the coasts. There's only so much coastal land in the world. We have 10,000 miles of it stretching up the St. Lawrence and around the Great Lakes. And just water makes for magical places to live. People want to live, work, and play around this incredible outdoors and natural environment. And you in Traverse City, showed the way a long time ago. You cleaned up, according to Tim, the cherry canneries that used to dot your waterfront, but you did it 70, 80 years ago. Some communities around the industrial heartland are just beginning to make that move, because this place is thriving because it's got this amazing quality of life and place. And blue places that you can enjoy, you can access, you can see the water, you can walk along it, you can recreate, you can sit at your office window and look at it. People pay more money to have a hotel that overlooks the water. But the first step is cleaning up the mess. Muskegon got started much later than Traverse City. It was a big industrial, beautiful harbor in Lake Michigan. They built, 50 years ago, a Holiday Inn on the waterfront that the windows didn't face the water because it was such a horror show. And now Muskegon is coming along and redeveloping it, and it's a big piece of the value and future of these communities. And in Michigan, it not only is a great economic, it defines us. It's our lifestyle. If you poll people, what do you care about most in Michigan? It's our beautiful outdoors, our Great Lakes, great places to enjoy them with your family. That's what Michiganders care about. My colleague, Alan Steinman, who 10 years ago, when we first painted this picture and built this Blue Economy Initiative, how do we understand it? He slipped in a picture of himself. He was head of the Grand Valley Annis Water Research Institute. So he's the guy in the middle with the biggest fish. That was his no, he made more contributions to our presentations than that. All right, but so, okay, that's all sounds good. How does it really matter? So 10 years ago, we put together this architecture and this understanding about what is the blue economy, what's it worth to us in terms of jobs, incomes every year. And there's 5 ways that water matters. 2 of them are the way it's always mattered, as you ship stuff out of it, it's a resource, you pull fish out of it. But the emerging ways water matters as growing water technology, smart water businesses, centers of education innovation that solve water problems and train the scientists and the water engineers of tomorrow and the environmental folks who manage this beautiful landscape. And just having beautiful blue places where water is accessible and is part of, you're connected to it in your community, like Traverse City. And we put a report together, this is now 10 years old. What does this add up to? And at that time in Michigan, we added all these categories up, and water at that time meant 1 in 5 jobs is associated with water innovation, water stewardship, water work in some way, and 60 billion annually in incomes. And you take that apart, these are the 2 legacy ways. These used to be major ways. They're now diminished. There's not as much shipping. There aren't as many people that depend on the fisheries for their livelihood, though it's still in Michigan and across the Great Lakes. We made estimates across the Great Lakes, how many jobs and how many billions of dollars annually. This has always been the biggest way we use water. We use water to make things, to grow things. That's why all these factories and manufacturing facilities and energy generating plants had to be on the water that powered the industrial economy. Now, we used to do all these things in ways, and you make beer and water, but we used to do all this in ways that like wrecked the waters, fouled the waters. Now we're learning how to do it smartly using the water, using it more efficiently, not fouling it. But it's still the largest share of jobs, income-dependent, water-dependent businesses. But the most exciting and the growing areas are these fast-growing, emerging ways water matters. Water product services, water technology-based firms. And these are growing trillions of dollars a market globally. It takes super pure water to make semiconductors like they do over at Hemlock Semiconductors. People like Whirlpool and others who innovated in appliances are now making the net zero water energy use appliances of the future. You make energy from water. You filter water in manufacturing facilities to be much more efficient and use less energy. That's what they're doing at Dow and other places. All this green infrastructure that we're pioneering and building to make our communities more resilient to climate change and weather, that's work. That's environmental engineers working around watersheds around the world. Our engineering companies are doing this work. And my favorite is Cascade Engineering, which makes auto parts. They made a plastic, simple, injected molded part that you take to the developing world where 60% of people in hospital are there for waterborne pathogens, and you filter water so they can drink it. You're solving global public health problem with competencies built in the auto industry here in Michigan. And this is a huge growing industry. It's what you all are working on here. I just got a briefing from your work. It's exciting. And any place that's the center of the action for research, development, education, trainer, that's the fulcrum for the innovations, technologies, and the water talent that drives the economy. And we've got dozens of water research centers of excellence in the region, from Milwaukee to Michigan Tech to U of M. They're all over, and people have been expanding them and growing them. Lake Superior State opened a bigger freshwater research enterprise there. University of Illinois is one of those pictures. So this is, and the community colleges like this one that are educating the water-related workforce, from high-end engineers to technicians to those who are going to be doing the research and solving the science of pathogens in our water, algae in our lakes. That's water work. And it's the jobs that many people want to do, particularly young people. They want to solve these problems for the world. And if they can do it here and we build the centers, they'll stay here. They don't have to go somewhere else and leave us. And finally, this is what we know so viscerally. Water, when you remake your industrial waterfronts like they've done here, they've done 180 miles of Detroit with an interlaced trail and outdoor space and open space and bike lanes and water trails, it's a fulcrum for local and economic development. And it's more than tourists. It's people want to live there year-round and they can enjoy this multi-use water-rich space. We did some studies. Again, I translated some studies some real economists did about whether quality of life and place, like good schools, outdoor recreation opportunities, arts, culture, like in communities like Traverse City, is that more important to two things we care about, job creation, good job creation, and population growth, which is really what we care about, than traditional business-friendly, cut taxes, have weak regulation? Quality of life and place today is way more a contributor to growth of good-paying jobs and growth in community population than those traditional business-friendly economic development strategies. And they've got regressions to prove it. So now all around the region, it wasn't true 20 years ago, everybody's doing this. Everybody's organizing around their water, redeveloping their beautiful water-rich environs to increase their quality of life and place, building out centers of research, learning, excellence. I mean, Buffalo started way later than Milwaukee, and now the beautiful waterfront over there, but it was a mess of silos and switching yards and everything else. Now they're beginning to do it. And so when we do this work, we do, again, solve the problems of today and tomorrow of sustainable engagement, use, and enjoyment of this spectacular asset that we have. And we are translating, as we speak, this Rust Belt into this amazing, vibrant, connected to our natural order freshwater coast. So that's my pitch about why this blue economy and the work you're doing here is so important. Let me call up Frank and John. And I'm going to sit down with them, and I know I'm going to turn over to Frank first. I was asked to speak too a couple years ago at a similar event, and some of the Bay Mills tribal members were there, as Frank may remember. And often people come to me and say, will you give the big picture of the blue economy? I'm like, no. The tribal folks have a bigger, more profound understanding of our relationship to the water and natural order. So I think you're going to get an even better version from Frank now. Yeah, thank you.
Ani, pipi guado dem, waganak sing and donjaba, Ettawageshik, Indigenous. I greeted you in the Anishinaabe language, said hello, and that the sparrowhawk is the mark of my family, mark of my clan, and my name is Noonday. And those are the traditional ways that I would introduce myself. I've had the opportunity to be working for quite a number of years. I tell people I'm 75 and 11/12 old. In other words, my birthday's next month, right? And that's given me some perspective on things as I've looked at things. And when you're young, you're sort of impatient. Then you get sort of, well, you can't be so impatient, so you got to work on committees and work on long-term studies. And as you get older, you start to get a little more impatient. You realize if you're going to get something done, well, you better hurry up because you don't have that much longer yet to do it. And so those are the kind of things that I think about a lot. I wanted to talk to you about several things, but I think the first thing I want to talk about is what we call the original treaty. Well, we might talk about like the 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty between the U.S. and Canada that created the International Joint Commission and consequently the Great Lakes Water Quality Board under the Water Quality Agreement for the Great Lakes. These are important things. I noticed on those pictures, all those cities, every one of them is part of that process. We've done things through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, for instance, that's been funded to help provide funds to do a lot of this cleanup that we were talking about. But all of that stuff, we have this treaty, the 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty. Most people aren't even aware that it exists. And yet it's crucial to this work that John has just laid out to you in helping to lay a format, because fish, for instance, they don't know whether they're Canadian or U.S. They have no idea, Canada geese, well, they sort of know they're from Canada, but but the thing is that we have these treaties that we make between countries, between ourselves. Our tribes made treaties between themselves long before the white man came. But what we have, what's called, is the original treaty. And this is something that is not new thoughts for me. It's something I've been taught by many others who've talked about this. But the original treaty is the treaty between us as human beings and all those other beings in the world that we share this creation with. The rock beings, the water beings, the air, all the animals of different sorts. And every one of them has sacred duties. They know, a rock knows it's got to be a rock, and it's going to be a rock. And it sort of knows how to do that. But, it's hard for us to do that. A bird, well, they have their things that they need to do. Each one of these animals, and the microbes, everything, they have their sacred duties. And our sacred duty, as part of this original treaty, is to not get in their way, to not interfere with them achieving their sacred duties. And what they give for us, they provide gifts. The trees, they help us make our homes and help us warm ourselves with fires. They provide sap for those wonderful maple syrup for our pancakes and such. We think about all these gifts that the animals give us, and these other beings. So part of our job is to live up to our sacred duty, and part of our sacred duty is to not interfere with the sacred duty of all these other beings. It's a respect for nature. And in doing that, this has a profound effect on your thinking as you try to figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to build this factory over here? Are you going to do that? What are you going to do? And you start to think long term. We think, we're taught to think in the native culture, to think about the consequences of our actions through a time period long enough to encompass 7 generations. Well, that's quite a long time. Often we don't know the name of our ancestors 7 generations ago, but what they did affects what we do today. Where they moved, where they lived, what the kind of jobs they did, whether they got education in this or that. All those different things helped affect us, who we are today. And when we think about those 7 generations, what are we doing right now that 7 generations from now, people are going to be remembering us, all the people in this room, this particular meeting, this particular group of people, including all those that are watching us via the internet, all of that, we are a community. And what are we going to do that 7 generations from now, people may remember what we did? What are those things we affect, the effects that will be? So that idea about having that long view and how to respect the natural world and what things we need to do in order to not interfere with the natural world functioning, those are the things that help guide our thinking about economics, for instance. And so I think that there's a concept called conscious capitalism. Many of you have heard of this and have worked with it, but in essence, it's that you judge a business, for instance, not by generally how much money it's going to make, but that's one kind of capital, but as it creates social capital and community capital, these things that we need. Do we have happy people, healthy families, healthy environment while we're also making money? So when I hear John talk about this blue economy, it's looking at how we're going to make money, how we're going to be able to sustain ourselves at the same time that we're not interfering with all those other beings around us. For a long time, we've had things called sacrifice zones. Sacrifice zones, I can tell you that, I live up in Harbor Springs. We have this nice waterfront there. You've probably been down to Week-Patonsing. You may have seen those great big houses there. These cottages that were built, many of them back in the 1870s, 1880s, when the railroad came through. Why were they built there? Because the people that owned the factories in Fort Wayne and Chicago and Detroit and other places, they didn't want their families living in those hot, dirty, polluted cities in the summer. So they sent their families up to where the air was fresh and it was beautiful and everything. So they made their money there. They sacrificed the people that lived in those areas. Their health was harmed. Those areas, many of them became what we call now areas of concern around the Great Lakes. That these areas were so polluted that they needed, it's going to cost millions, if not billions of dollars to clean them up. But what they did is they sacrificed one area to live in another area. That is not what we need to be doing. We need to figure out how to make every place livable, how to have a healthy environment for everyone. And so these ideas to me are sort of rooted in that concept of that original treaty. I think about, I've served for a number of years on the Great Lakes Water Quality Board. You heard me on that. My term will be up at the end of this month after being on for 2 consecutive terms. So I will no longer, I can say I'm a former member. But that board, one of the things we talk about there is swimmable, fishable, drinkable. So you think about the lakes. It's not enough to say, all right, we're going to stop polluting. We're not going to do any more damage. What we have to do is undo what we've done. We need to clean up. We need to restore. And the thing is, we can never go back and say, we can never completely go back and restore things the way they used to be totally. But we can make sure that we don't do more harm. And that's when I think about this idea of when you think about the businesses and you think about whether they're going to, are they going to make social capital and community capital, environmental capital? Are they going to be able to be strengthening us as people? Are our children going to be able to live in a world that's a little cleaner or better than where we were? That's always the hope. And at this point, we're struggling with that. We have issues of climate change. Those are words that they're trying to ban in many places now. But I had a friend that always wrote, he had a tagline on his letters, and he said, there are a lot of climate deniers, climate change deniers, but there aren't any weather deniers, he said. And the thing is that climate is basically accumulated weather as you go through this. Well, we have to think about that. How are we going to protect our lakes? Dave Dempsey here from town, and he wrote a book called On the Brink, and one of the scenes in that book is people taking a tour of the lake bottom of Lake Michigan in a bus driving by shipwrecks. Where'd the water go? Well, a sizable amount of Lake Michigan is less than 40 feet deep. And if we divert the water, if we don't take care of the water, we could do what they did to the Aral Sea over in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Soviet engineers diverted water for agriculture and industry. They lost like 80% of the water in that lake. It was one of the largest saline lakes in the world. And you literally can drive across the lake bottom on your way to the shore. And you'd be in a fishing village, and it's now 30 miles to the edge of the lake. So that means that it's a disaster. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we've been trying to protect from. We've been trying to work to protect our waters. And when I first became tribal chairman a number of years ago, now pushing 30 years ago, one of the elders came up to me and said, Frank, you have to protect the water. And every now and then, he'd come up to me and said, what are you doing? And I'd say, well, I did this, I did that, and I kept working at it. And so I've done a lot of things to try to help protect our water, and in doing so, that helps protect our relationships, and it helps protect our future. So I have a lot of other things I could talk about. In fact, I've been known to, when I get up to talk at one of the tribal things, they say, throw another log on the fire, Frank's talking. But with that, I think I'm going to leave this because I know we have another speaker here, and then we're going to have some round-robin discussion and answer questions. So I just want to leave you with that thought about that original treaty and how we all play a part in implementing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, John. And thank you, Alex, and your team for putting these on. I know these are a Herculean effort, and we appreciate it. So I'm John Luchko. I'm the director of the Great Lakes Water Studies Institute. 14 years ago, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I was looking through the paper catalog that NMC used to have. Yes, we used to have a paper catalog that you could actually physically look through. And I stopped on a page, and it had a fish on it. I said, what is this? It's a fish. What is this? Right next to that fish, it said freshwater studies. I said, okay, I'll try it out. I enrolled in the Intro to Freshwater Studies class that fall, and I got an email shortly thereafter from some guy named Hans Van Summer. I thought, a fish and some guy named Hans? I'm in. This is awesome. 14 years later, obviously, here I am, and I could, as Frank said, I could stand up here and talk for probably an hour about my experiences, but I'll try to be succinct. I'm proud every day of what the Great Lakes Water Studies Institute has accomplished in the close to 20 years, over 20 years now that it's been in existence. But it really started, and Hans, you can pay me later, it really started when Hans was brought on, because what he saw was the opportunity to bring an institute like this and offer academic programs where we could start to provide a workforce for this very important work. Because what better place to do it? And I often start my talks. I just gave a talk a couple days ago at the U.S. Hydro Conference, which is a international conference for hydrographic survey, which is mapping the underwater areas of the oceans and the lakes. I always start with a picture of where I live, where we live. And I say, this is why we do what we do. Because if you look at where the Great Lakes campus is, we can go from classroom to boat to the water in a matter of minutes. And there is no better place to do this work and to do this kind of research and to train these kind of people that are going to be that next generation of people that will do work in the blue economy. For those that I'm sure many of you are aware, we have multiple degrees in freshwater studies. That was our first degree. I am an alumni of that program. That's really a transfer degree. We get students started on that, and then they tend to go off into a four-year university. We have obviously the Marine Technology program, which we offer both a 2-year and a 4-year degree in that. We're fortunate to be able to offer a bachelor's degree as a community college, which we take full advantage of. And then our newest degree, a water quality and environmental technology degree, which we're really gearing up to be a degree which students can get 2-year degree and go right out into the workforce. I oftentimes have students come into my office who are, again, maybe found that picture of a fish, right, and so to speak, and they say, I want to do something important. I want to do something that matters. I'm working at Costco right now. Nothing wrong with Costco, but I want to do something that matters to the world, matters to my community, and matters to the people that I care about. And that's really what sets them into that direction of leading them into this career path, these opportunities. And again, I have endless amounts of pride of what we've been able to do. We have students that work locally in Traverse City. We have students that have gotten opportunities in the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, and we also have students that work all over the country and, in fact, all over the world. I just spoke with a student, Tyler Smith. He works for Schmidt Ocean Institute. He spent 4 weeks in Antarctica doing deep-sea research with a very large remotely operated vehicle aboard a very nice research vessel. And when he first came to me, he was a poet. He was a writer. And he said, and he didn't say he wanted to do something that mattered. He said, I want to use those skills but do something different and want to do something in water. And so he started the program. He took the WSI 200 class, which is our 2-week field course that we offer in the summer. And it was the middle of COVID. He had a mask on. I barely knew what he looked like. And he got done with that class, and he said, John, I'm in. He finished the 2-year degree, and he's traveled the globe doing this work. Another student, Sarah Surgeon, she came into met with Hans and I in the lab. She was a social worker. And she said, I'm considering a career change. And I found out your program, and I'd like to talk about it. We talked to her for about 30 minutes, and again, she said, I'm in. 2 years later, she's been aboard numerous research vessels, has been all over the world doing this important work. And oftentimes, and I know Warren will say, will think, I'm sending these people sort of out away from the borders of Michigan, which can be true. Some of our students do go far and wide, but I'll tell you, a lot of students and a lot of these companies allow them to work wherever they want. And oftentimes they pick Michigan. In fact, they pick Traverse City as their home base. And a lot of students will say, once I go and get this experience and maybe spend a few years in industry, I'm coming back. And unfortunately, COVID sort of opened up those opportunities for remote work. And a lot of these companies will offer that and allow that. So it's important work what we're doing. I see the blue economy, and I think, before, as a student, I didn't know what the blue economy was. I didn't even know what those tag words, those buzzwords meant. But we were doing it then. We were doing it at that time. We were putting people into the blue economy, giving people the skills and the understanding and the knowledge to not only get good jobs, right? That's important, make a good living, but to do things that matter and to be those people that care and are going to be the stewards for the Great Lakes. Be the voices for the Great Lakes and be those people that'll work to protect them. Do the work that matters. Thank you. I'll hand it off to John first. John, I guess, what do you think NMC's role is in the blue economy, in particular, as far as what we do with our students, what we do in our training? What is your perspective on that?
Knowing a bit about what you've been about here for a while, and part of our discussion in the previous session with kind of the business innovation, those looking at how do we support new tech startups and things, there's research universities and companies that do, the most cutting edge new technology development, finding the new engineering application that can send a probe into a sewer pipe and repair it instantly. You guys are verging on that here, but you're also a community college. And so your mission is not to, do the research to solve the world's problems of how do you feed people in Africa. Your job is to prepare this talent that works in this arena of water-related and environmentally sensitive work, which can range from your high-tech design and management of your AI drones that are going under the Antarctica ice shelf, which you guys are pioneering here. And I bet you his poetry is getting even better by looking through there. He's probably seen amazing things. To manage efficiently a new high-tech water treatment complex that is much more efficient, and to avoid this overruns into the Great Lakes is a very high-tech management engineering challenge, which you all are also preparing. You're also preparing the people that can go in and manage the pipes and the other things that are important water management things. So that's your role, and you're being very innovative in that. I think I wanna just comment on your last comment. How do we not send all of our talent out into the world, but how do we attract them here? I would not underestimate at all the importance of the values message that communities send from their business, political, civic, and their universities and colleges about the nature of the community and the work they want to do. Young people, as I've experienced them, they want to solve the world's big problems. They want to be involved in social justice, in solving climate change, in being good stewards of the environment. And if they think they can do it in a community that's serious about it, and with companies that are serious about it, that's where they want to be. I designed a course at University of Michigan for undergrads to try to paint this picture of we can be the leader in the green-blue economy. And I relied on the guest lecture method pretty heavily, where people like former Grand Rapids Mayor George Hartwell, who some of you know George. Grand Rapids, over several decades, it's become the greenest mid-sized city. Their private sector business leadership has been committed to going green. They've got companies like Cascade Engineering, who makes that water filtering, who are solving big problems. George started his talk with 30 undergrads saying, how many of you from Michigan? 7/8 of them were in that class. How many of you are staying in Michigan after you graduate? Only a handful. Then he told them all the things that Grand Rapids is doing to be the greenest community, committed to sustainability, setting goals for getting people out of cars onto buses, saving energy, smart water use. And then by the end of the class, like, Jesus Christ, I want to go live in Grand Rapids. And that's the values message that we all need to help animate communities that are committed to solve the problems of the world, but also be good stewards of their environs. And the rocks and the waters, as Frank says, that's the values that people want to contribute to and be associated with.
Frank, I'll ask you the same question. Where do you think NMC fits with some of the stuff you talked about?
Well, I think giving a place for poets to develop is really important. As a potter and an artist, and I've worked in that. I've worked on the art fairs. We're here at the college for years as part of that, as part of my background. And the arts are a way of communicating that you reach people who you wouldn't reach any other way. So the college is not just talking about technicians and things, but you're talking about poets, but you're also talking about training people for advocacy. They may not be the science, they may not be involved in engineering, but they're pretty good at talking to people, and some of them can convince you pretty well about something. And I have had many of them work with me about convincing me on things. But the point is that we need advocates. We need advocates at our city councils, at our county commissions. We need advocates in our township governments, but we need advocates in state government and in federal government. We also need advocates in the international arena. And all of those people will start with things that can be done and awareness that can be opened up through their experience. And I think that I know several who have attended here and have gone on to do these things. And so I think that's a real strong contribution of the college.
Of all of our students that have gone through all of our programs over the years, I think there was a single one that didn't become an advocate by default. And I don't mean that in a way that it's just by default, by design, but by learning, by understanding what it is that is needed, what it is that is so important to so many people, including themselves, their own family, the community. They end up being advocates. And even if they are halfway around the globe, they are still advocates and they also understand that fresh water is so valuable and so important to the world. And they'll be in the middle of the ocean, and I've heard this before, they'll be in the middle of the ocean doing research and doing their work, and their heart is in the Great Lakes. They want to get back to the Great Lakes to do that work. So thank you. That's great perspective from both of you. Thank you.
Well, I could just leave you all to your own and not interrupt anything. We could keep listening. But I've got some questions from the audience here and questions from online. And let's start with this first one from an NMC student. The question is, are you working with shipping companies on and around the Great Lakes to positively impact the blue economy? Have you considered working with them since mariners play a significant role in that area of the economy? So on shipping, maritime activity, it's very timely and very appropriate for our area with the Great Lakes Maritime Academy here. So I'll hand it to John for that one. John, which John? Let's go John L., yeah.
So yes, and so there's a large push for what's called smart ships, right? Becoming uncrewed, and that is a big thing that is emerging. Having these ships be less and less crewed. Now, a Maritime Academy student may not want to hear that, right? Where's my job? But also becoming more efficient, having less effect on the environment by what they use and what they burn. Even the electrification of vessels, that's a huge emerging technology that's coming out. So we as an institute, we sort of stay on the other side of that, but GLMA is a major player in that. But I'd be curious, John, what your perspective is and if you have any.
I don't know much about that dimension. I've witnessed, there used to be a great equivalent of like cruise ship and recreational shipping on the Great Lakes, And now it's just beginning to come back, because for years and years, why would anyone want to be on a cruise ship that ports, in Muskegon? It's a mess. But now we're seeing the growth of that because we've made progress of cleaning up the mess, and anyone has to just step off and see Muskegon Harbor, its natural, amazing beauty, to say, no, these are like special places to come and visit. And so that's part of how, if you clean up the mess that we made, you're making this a wonderful, attractive place for us to live and work and play, but also the world to discover and enjoy it with us.
I'll add on one thing real quick, Frank. As I mentioned, I was at a conference this week, and it came up of the need to map, the need to understand what's below the surface. And Rear Admiral Ben Evans, who's the director of the Office of Coast Survey for NOAA, he said 46% of our EEZ, of United States EEZ, is unmapped to high resolution. And to what he sometimes will get the response is, well, who cares? Well, we all should care, because we should understand what's going on under the surface. We should understand and collect that data to make informed decisions, but also, oh, by the way, a lot of shipping occurs, and we need to update charts, and we need to have safe navigation. And so that it becomes a huge player in it as well. 15% of the Great Lakes have been mapped to high resolution. And so think about that. That's a very, very small percentage, and there's a push to get it mapped, but that directly is related to the billions of dollars in commerce that runs back and forth in the Great Lakes through those freighters.
And you guys are doing that work, right?
Correct.
People here, you're doing that mapping.
And, I think about the other part of shipping is that for those of us, and we worked on this during the Great Lakes Regional Collaboration and the Plan for Restoration and Preservation of the Lakes, that led to the GLRI, one of the issues that we raised was ballast water from ships, from ocean-going ships coming in, and also invasive species that come in through the Welland Canal and other areas. So at the same time that we're talking about shipping, we also have to think about the other aspects of it. And I know that, that there are individuals working on invasive species, in particular aquatic ones we're talking now, and that this is an important contribution that can come through the work here. And so I think that that's something we have to consider as we there's always another side to everything we look at, and we have to look at the whole picture. And so, another thing to think about, and I think about this and have talked about it often, is that the shipping patterns, the traffic patterns, even on the land, all of these things, they really haven't changed in like 1,500 years. We're still hauling freight through the same places where we were hauling freight on the lakes, on the water. We were doing it in large canoes, taking copper ore from Isle Royal and other places down. And these kind of things have always been happening. And so we've had a long time effect, and we haven't really invented new things. We've just found new ways to do things that have always been done. And we have to do that in a respectful and a way that isn't harmful to the world. So there's, I had one of my relatives was on a freighter. You're talking about controlling, the self-driving basically. He was on a freighter coming into port, and the boat, all on its own, turned all the way around and headed back out. Nobody knows exactly why, it just did it. And it was crewed, okay? So we have to think about what do all these things mean, and there's amazing things that happen on the lakes. And we know, since so little is mapped on the bottom, we don't even know that much about the surface in many cases, the things that happen. So I just thought that'd be good to add.
I appreciate that. Frank, you sort of intuitively got to a question that we had from Roger City that was about invasive species, so thank you for that. And then the fact that the technology and training the workforce will help us solve those issues that desperately need to be solved. Another question from Karen Siegel. She asked, I want to mention that question on shipping was from a student, Evelyn Harden, so recognize her. The next question from Karen Siegel. What is the role of immigrants in maintaining and growing the blue economy? I think this is in the face of losing immigrants to deportation. So probably a John Austin question.
When I started this work 20 years ago with Brookings on what's a set of strategies for economic evolution, positive transformation across the whole Great Lakes, we were looking for anything and everything that mattered to growing jobs, growing new businesses, repopulating communities that were losing population as our industrial economy contracted, of which we have many. And this is what led me to seize on any avenue, including, we have the innovation horsepower and the talent horsepower to be the leaders of growth in this blue and green economy. It's equally true that we are the region that most benefits and most needs all the new immigrants we can get. They've been the single greatest source of revival of communities, revitalizing communities, new entrepreneurs, new small business development, because where immigrants come, they create jobs, they don't take jobs. So we created immigrant welcoming efforts, Global Detroit, which have been copied around the Midwest. The only source of population growth in the city of Detroit over the last 20 years has been immigrants, meaning net. Detroit has continued to lose people, but immigrants keep coming. Same with Flint. That's why it's horrific when we hear about frightening people that immigrants are somehow a threat. Immigrants coming to Springfield, Ohio, they were there because they were doing jobs and helping that community grow again. So immigrants are a source of economic dynamism. Who do you think settled this region? We're all immigrants in Michigan, except for Frank and his ancestors who were here always.
John, I was just going to say it always, it's sort of an ironic amusement that immigrants are complaining about immigrants, okay? And to me, So I guess I have to follow up on that, huh? No, but, you know, we have, you know, in my family tree, I have folks from England and Scotland and, you know, several other places. All of us have a mixture, but what I say for us is that we're all indigenous to the earth. And every one of us has ties to the earth. We all are from cultures that cherish the earth and wanted to protect it. And some cultures have drifted further away from those teachings than others, but we all come from those roots. And, you know, we have a common interest. You see that picture, you know, the blue planet that we saw, so that was taken. You know, we all live on a relatively small little piece of real estate within this vast universe. And even though it seems really big, we can mess it up. And so we have to be careful how we do that. But, you know, I don't see the question about immigrants is that it's really critical. You know, I love the Polish restaurant I go to that's with Polish cooks. I think I've been to Poland. I really like that food, you know. But I also, you know, understand that as a human race, we are moving around where we need to be throughout the earth. And whenever we try to restrict and control that, we're stopping a normal pattern, a normal system. And it's like water finding its own level. And I think we need to think of it that way.
I'll just add on to that I don't see them as immigrants. I see them as people, and I see them as potential students who want to do this work. And it's a need. It's an industry that needs people. They're people, and they want to do this important work. That's all they are to me. So.
And very practically, a lot of our universities, regional universities, which are great assets in communities, under the first Trump administration, that door of international students that they were relying on. They took in lots of international students, and a lot of them stayed and made their lives and contributed. That door was shut, and those universities began to suffer financially, and that's likely to happen again.
Okay, I have another question in the auditorium here from Dan Kronselka. Dan's one of our newest members and just retired from USAID and other agencies after a 30-year career. So great question from Dan. Given EPA deregulation, how will Michigan develop without repeating past environmental degradation?
The only thing I can talk about that is that I'm going to talk about climate change and the fact that the Paris Accord works because there are nationally determined contributions. And that's the nation is making a contribution to figure out how to lower greenhouse gas emissions, how to less harmful to the environment. But I've advocated for indigenously determined contributions for the tribes, for instance, the indigenous governments around to do. And one government I know has reduced like 85,000 metric tons of carbon just by changing light bulbs over 10 years. And there's the other part of it is, though, and this gets to the heart of the question, there's a personally determined contribution. What can every individual do? And so you can do that, and you can do things. Years ago, when we were talking a lot about water in particular, I told everybody, turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth. You don't need to run it the whole time you're doing it. If everybody did that, how much water did we not run through the pipes, through the cleaning, through the septic systems, and all of this? How much water do we save if everybody did that? So there's actions that an individual can take that are meaningful. And I think that's part of this question of dealing with this is that everybody can take an action that does that.
Well, and also, happily, we're still in a federalist government, meaning we have federal government, we have governors, we have states, we have local decision-making. Under the first Trump administration, when he left the Paris Agreement, more of our economy was controlled and operated by states under governors and mayors and cities, more of our economy that stayed in Paris and kept commitment to those greening goals, communities like Grand Rapids. So more of our country can decide again with what they can control, which they can control a lot. No, we're going to keep moving on this frontier of being good stewards and ameliorating climate change. We're not going to open the door to this. And we still have authorities and we still have decision makers at those levels who can remain committed and have the powers to help us remain committed if we're committed, as Frank says.
I think a good place to have a final question is from a student on our student leadership team, Mitchell Mosley. He asked, how can non-students, I read that as, the general public, citizenry, we like to call them lifelong learners, right? That's all of us here. How can those folks contribute to our blue economy? What is the power that the people hold to push the blue economy into flourishing the way we want to see? Maybe John Austin first.
Well, as I said, you can support and elect and work with leaders that share that commitment, and you can make that litmus test for who you give your support to. You can yourselves, and so much actually of what, as you know, in this country, we do as stewards of our outdoors have been animated by citizens, nonprofits who go out there and do the work and get the information and organize. I mean, we're unlike other countries. Most of the work is done not by government. It's done by organized citizens in agencies and organizations, in community and environmental groups, as one example, who go out and do the work.
I think it's also educating the young people and explaining to them what the blue economy is, right? Because what is it? What does it mean for careers? What does it mean for academic opportunities, for degree pathways? And I'm not just talking about NMC. Of course, we have a really great program, but other institutions that are doing the same thing, but just educating them and say, hey, this is a viable career path, and oh, by the way, it really, really matters to do it.
And that idea, the whole question of personal commitment is so important, that you can decide yourself how you're gonna live. You can decide what you're gonna choose to support or not support. And the idea to remember is that, and I talked about sacrifice zones. Don't say, well, I'm doing this really good, so I can do something bad over here. Think about the fact that you need to try to balance all the stuff that you're doing and balance your life and have every day be a little bit better rather than a little worse. So the question is, are you contributing to the health of your family, your community, to the world, or are you a burden to your health and your family and the community and the world as a whole? And if you are, every day you ask that question. One of the elders used to say, and he did this often, he'd say, every day you get up, you got to think, Angie Shin, the good and the bad. You got to make a decision every day. And some days you have to make it many times during the day. And the thing is, he always said the same thing over and over and over again when we talk. And he'd say this all the time. And one day, somebody said, why are you always saying that? And he said, because I don't think they've got it yet.
On a same vein, I think it was some 15 years ago, Al Gore's movie came out, An Inconvenient Truth. I took my son Murphy to see it. He was 11 years old. And I think at the end of the movie, 10 things each of you could do to make a difference. So Murph ran home and did all the 10 things, which included, putting a bottle in the toilet tank to displace some water and save some money. Of course, the bottle, the label dripped off and clogged up the thing. But it was a very well-intentioned effort. So there are those 10 things that each of us can do.
Wow. This is the sad time for me. I always hate to wrap these things up, and we have to limit our time together with you, unfortunately. But I want to thank you all, John, Frank, John. Thank you for your perspective, about how we can grow sustainably and be stewards of our environment, continue to develop the blue economy responsibly and thoughtfully, and to keep this Traverse City, Northern Michigan, a place of quality and vitality for generations to come, just like Frank said, thinking 7 generations ahead. So a big round of applause for Frank, John, and Frank. Frank, John, and John. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Frank. I've got a few more notes if you'd like to stick around to hear those. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, John. All right. I won't keep you too long, but I would hope that we'll see all of you next month on April 17th. We'll have a chance to introduce our academic World Quest champions from Traverse City West Senior High, so you get to meet them, and we'll be sending them to Washington, D.C. for the national competition at the end of April. It's a phenomenal experience for these young thinkers and future leaders. And we'll welcome our IAF student leadership team. Our first ever student-driven event is next month. They'll be in conversation with Danielle K. Brown, PhD, Associate Professor in the School of Journalism at Michigan State University. Dr. Brown's work is in the cross-section of journalism, political science, and sociology. She specializes in analyses of media representations and narrative change, social movements and activism, identity, and political psychology. And that fits into the students' chosen theme. Their curated theme is Echoes of Change, the Legacy of Student Activism. So be here for that next month, April 17th. And they'll have other panelists that'll appear on screen and some video, pre-recorded video interviews that they've done. I just got to watch one today, and you will be blown away. So very impressive stuff these students are leading. Until we see you then, I encourage you to support as a member, tell a friend about IAF, be part of the college and IAF's community of global citizens in our 31st season. And thanks to all of you for your commitment and dedication to that mission. Until next time, thank you all for joining us. Good night.